Hi everyone, this is Celine from Blue Calla Patterns and welcome to video 4 for the Rose Gathered Shoulder Bag. We're going to start by sewing up our zipper panel. So what I'm going to do now, at the end of the pattern I am attaching a middle zipper end to the closed end of the zipper. However, I find it a little bit easier to do it at this stage. Like I mentioned, I did cut my zipper a little bit longer than what the length is. It's because it's a personal preference thing, if you prefer a longer tail or a shorter tail to your zipper. If you're not sure what you like, you can cut it a bit longer and then wait until the very end to add a zipper end to your zipper. Now I'm going to put mine right now because I know that I'm going to like this length. I've already made several of this bag, so there's no surprises for me. If you're using a metal zipper end, it's really easy to add one. Make sure that you're adding it to the closed end of your zipper. If you're using zipper tape like me and the open end is still closed, I don't open my end till I need to. So this is the closed end of my zipper. And you should have it wrong side facing up, and you just fold in the end and then try it out, see how well your zipper end fits. So that goes on really easily. So before you put it on permanently, you're just going to put a drop of glue. I think my glue is a bit dried up. I put a drop of glue inside the zipper end. Try to get it right in the bottom there. Okay, and then insert your zipper as far as you can get it, and then secure it in place with the little screw. Just like that. Hopefully you can see this. I can never tell what shows on the camera or not. Okay, and there it is from the front end. Okay, so I'm just going to let that dry for a bit, and then we're going to baste the opened end of our zipper before we start sewing to our zipper panel pieces. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to baste the ends, open ends of our zipper so that they curve outwards at a 90-degree angle. And to do that, I want the curve to be at exactly the same location, top and bottom. So I am going to make a mark about 5/8 of an inch from the open end here. And then you're going to open your zipper like this, okay? And hopefully you can see the two marks. So what I do is I pinch the zipper at that mark that I just made, and then I fold it up so that that mark meets the coil, and then I baste it in place here on along the outer edge. And then I do exactly the same thing for the other side. So you pinch and then you bring that folded zipper tape up to meet the coil. And you want as much as possible for the way the coil, the area where the coil curves outwards, to be right next to each other. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the machine and I'll baste this in place. So here's a look at the zipper once the ends are basted and the zipper is curving outwards. And if you find it difficult to baste them in place with your machine, you can always do this by hand, and it's probably a little bit easier, but I like the fast way, so I've just practiced until I was happy doing it with my machine. So I'm going to set up my ironing mat and we're going to start attaching the zipper panels to the zipper. So we have 2 lining zipper panels and 2 exterior zipper panels. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to press about 1/4 inch towards the wrong side on all 4 pieces. Now, if you find 1/4 inch a little bit too difficult, it doesn't really matter if you fold in a bit more, like 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, as long as you're consistently pressing the same amount on all 4 pieces. Okay. Now you're going to need one of the lining pieces and your zipper. And you're going to place the zipper. You want to have the unfolded end here where you have the opening of your zipper. So here's my folded end at this end here. And you're going to place this, and I want you to leave about 3/8 of an inch of space here at the beginning. And then pin or clip your zipper along the rest of the edge here. And now go over to your machine, and you can just do a quick basting stitch with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so the zipper is basted to this piece, and I'm going to just pull down a tiny bit. Now you're going to take an exterior piece and place it so that it is wrong side facing up, and you want to line up the folded ends so that they meet. Again, and then you want these ends here to also be lined up. Now I'm going to start sewing at the folded ends. I'm going to back stitch, and I'm going to sew this time with 1/4 inch seam allowance until I get to the end. Now you're going to move that pull out of the way because you don't want to sew next to it. You're going to have crooked stitching if you do that. Then when you get past the coil here, you're going to stop and rotate, and you're going to sew across with as close as you can get to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, but if it's 1/4 inch, that's fine also. You can just sew as close as you can to the coils without actually sewing over them. Oh, and then when you get to this end, make sure that you backstitch again. Okay, so the lining and the exterior zipper panels are sewn to one side of the zipper. So I'm just going to trim the seam allowance. I don't want to trim the zipper because I've already sealed it with a lighter. So I just want to trim a bit at the corner here so that when I flip these wrong sides together, that I have a nice sharp corner. This out. I have a little metallic thread sticking out from my linen. And then you can use something to poke out the corner. There we go. Okay, so we're flipping this, and then it's a little bit hard to press these away from the zipper. I used my thicker woven interfacing, so it takes a little bit more effort to press it away. I nearly just dropped scissors on my foot. That would have been interesting. Okay, do one side and then flip it over and do the other side. Now I find when I'm top stitching my zipper panels, I really tug away from the zipper to make sure that my fabric doesn't get caught in my zipper when I'm opening and closing the zipper. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to top stitch along this side here and all along the zipper, and then all along the folded ends so that they are sewn together. And I use a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I just do a quick basting stitch along the edge here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance so that the ends here of the zipper panels stay closed together. Okay, so we have the zipper panels attached to one side of the zipper, and now we're going to do the same thing with the other side, and you're repeating exactly the same steps as you've just done. Just a couple of things to take note of. When you're placing your zipper on your second lining panel piece, the lining zipper panel piece, make sure that you're lining up the folded edges perfectly. And then clipping in place. And repeating exactly the same steps that we just did to attach these two pieces. So I'm not going to be repetitive and show you all those steps again. They're exactly the same as when we attached these two pieces, just on the other side of the zipper. So the zipper panel is done now. Before we continue, I'm just going to fold it like this, and I'm going to make marks in the center on both sides, and then I'll set it aside for now. We're now going to start assembling the slip pockets and the interior zipper pocket. So I'm going to go and get the pieces. We'll start with the slip pocket. You'll need your slip pocket piece and one of your lining pieces. Now, before we start sewing pockets into our lining pieces, now's the time to make the marks for the centers, the bottom centers, and our pleat marks on the wrong side of the lining panels. It's easier to do it now than to wait until you have all of the pockets installed, because they're more difficult to fold in half at that point. So fold them in half vertically, right sides together, and then mark the center along the bottom. And then you're making pleat marks exactly as you did for the exterior at every 2 inches until you have 4 pleat marks on either side of the bottom center mark. Now, we're not going to be pleating just yet. We're just making the marks, and then we can pleat once the pockets are installed. Okay, so one piece, and then we do the same thing for the second piece. So I'm going to set aside one lining piece. Now we need our slip pocket piece. So the slip pocket piece is really wide. We're going to, because the lining piece is very wide, what we're going to do is, if you're using a directional print, you're going to want to pay attention to the print and how you place it on your lining piece. I am using a directional print, so I'll be able to show you what you need to pay attention for. So first we're going to fold it in half, right sides together. And then we're going to clip the raw edges and sew them together. And you sew them together with the regular seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch. Make sure that you back stitch at the beginning and the end. So you're back stitching here and here, and sewing all the way across. So now you should have a fabric tube, which you're going to turn right side out. and you're going to press it flat, and you're going to start by the seam. So I just sort of roll it between my fingers, and then I press it out just a little bit at a time. Okay, just like so. Then here's where you want to start paying attention to the direction of your print. So the seam will be at the bottom edge of your pocket, and then the nicely folded edge will be the top edge of your pocket. Okay, so I want my print to be facing this way, so I'm going to top stitch along the folded edge on this side. Okay, and you're not top stitching this edge. We're going to sew that bottom edge to the lining piece. So top stitching with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the top folded edge. Okay, so I've top stitched the top folded edge. Now you'll need your lining piece, and I'm going to use my large clear ruler place it where I would like it. You know what? I just realized I forgot to mark my top centers for when we attach our zipper panels. So I'm going to do that right now. You just want the top center mark, because when we're sewing the zipper panel to the lining piece, you want the zipper panel to be directly in the center. Okay, so now I want the top folded edge to be 3.5 inches from the top edge. So I just place my clear ruler, and then I can line up my slip pocket like this, and I should use pins instead of clips here. Then you just need to pin the two top corners. You don't need to pin anything else really. And then pin the bottom edge. Then you're going to go over to your machine, and you're going to sew the bottom edge of the slip pocket to the lining piece. And you can do that with 1/4 inch seam allowance from this bottom seam. Okay, so I'm going to go sew the bottom edge. Oop, I just realized that you can't see it, so we're sewing along this bottom edge here. Okay, so I've sewn along the bottom edge, and while I was at my machine, I also basted the sides of the slip pocket to the lining piece so that I could remove all of my pins. Now I'm going to separate this one large pocket into 3 smaller pockets. Now I've given some measurements, some suggestions for how to divide the pockets, but really you can divide them however you like. So I am going from this edge, I am doing 7 inches, and then from the 7-inch mark, I am doing 5.5. And that should leave you with a pocket piece that is 6.5. So separate it how you like. Just make sure that you don't make the pockets too narrow, otherwise you won't be able to fit your hand inside. So now I'm going to sew these 2 lines to separate into 3 pockets. Start from the bottom, back stitch, sew to the top, and make sure that you back stitch really well at the top to secure the opening of your pockets. Okay, so I now have the 3 separate pockets. You have a choice. You can go ahead and pleat the bottom edge of this lining piece right now, or you can wait until after we've attached the 2 lining pieces to the zipper panel. It's up to you, personal preference. I'm just going to do it later. Okay, so before we continue, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the other lining panel, and I'm just going to mark the top center on the right side for when we need to attach our zipper panel. Now I'm going to take my my zipper facing piece, and on the wrong side I'm going to draw a rectangle that will become the opening of our zipper. So I'm going to draw the rectangle so it is 9 inches wide, because our interior zipper is 9 inches wide. I mean 9 inches long, sorry. And then I want it to be about 3/8 of an inch high. If you're using a bigger zipper than a number 3 for your interior zipper pocket, you might want to increase this to 1/2 an inch high. So if you're using a 4.5 or a number 5 zipper, then you're going to want to make the box slightly bigger. And also what I'm going to do is make a mark in the center to help me line up with the center in my lining panel. Okay, so that's at 4.5 inches since it's 9 inches. And again, I'm going to use my big clear ruler, and I want to place this. I want to place this 2 inches from the top edge. So I want the top edge here, 2 inches from the top edge. And I'm lining up my center marks. And then I'm going to pin the zipper facing piece in place. And then we're going to go over to the machine and we're going to sew along the lines of the rectangle, and keep your needle in the down position when you're turning, when you're rotating at the corners. It'll just make your corners nice and sharp. Okay, so use a shorter stitch length as well. I use about a stitch length of 2.5 when I'm sewing around the rectangle. Okay, so I've sewn around the rectangle box, and I'm just going to take off my pins. And now I'm going to draw a line through the center of the rectangle box. And I won't go all the way to the end. I stop about 1/2 an inch or 3/8 of an inch from the ends. And then I draw 4 diagonal lines going from that center line to each of the 4 corners. Cutting mat down. So you have to be careful in this step to not cut any of the stitching, but you're going to cut out along these lines that you just drew. So hopefully you can see what I've done here. And when you're cutting the diagonal lines that go to the corners, you really want to get as close as you can into those corners without cutting any of the stitches. And I'm not wearing my glasses right now, so I'm being very brave. And I really hope I don't cut any of my stitches. Okay. So then we push this through to the wrong side, and I really take my time when I'm pressing in this step. I find it easier to roll, like dampen your fingers and roll the seam in between your fingers and press a small section at a time. And I think I let my iron cool down. It takes a bit of time, but it's nice to have a really nice opening for your zipper. apologize for how boring it is watching me do this. Nearly done. Well, I probably could have done a better job at the corners. Next time I'll remember to wear my glasses. They're not terrible, but I can do better. Okay, so then once you're done pressing from the front, turn it around and press it from the back. I did not do a good job pressing from the right side, so I'm having trouble in the back. All right. Okay, so now we're going to set this aside and we're going to get our zipper pocket lining pieces, and I have to find my zipper, and then we're going to attach the lining pieces to our interior zipper. Okay, found my dress zipper. What we're going to do to start is we're going to press the bottom edges of both zipper pocket pieces towards the wrong side, about 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. It doesn't really matter as long as you press the same amount on the bottom edge of both pieces. This. Okay, and then on one of the pieces, you're going to trim away the top 1 inch of the piece. So turn it around this way. So I can throw that out. Now take the piece that you just trimmed and place your zipper on top along the top edge. You want the lining piece right side facing up and the zipper right side facing up. And just center your zipper in the middle. So if you're using zipper tape, you probably cut it 2 inches longer, so it's going to go all the way from end to end. That is fine. I usually use zipper tape for this, so it looks a bit different normally. But I happen to have a matching dress zipper for this bag, so I decided to use that. Okay, now I'm going to sew the zipper tape. You have to move your pole as you're sewing to get it out of the way. And you start from this end. You sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You back stitch here. So all the way across, then back stitch again. Okay, so I've sewn this edge of the zipper to the lining piece, and now I'm just going to press it away from the zipper. So in this step, my lining piece is right side up and my zipper is wrong side up. Okay, so now take the remaining piece and you're sewing the other side of the zipper to the top edge, the unfolded edge of your last zipper pocket lining piece. And you're doing exactly the same thing, 1/4 inch seam allowance and back stitching at the beginning and the end. Okay, so this is now sewn in place, and I'm just going to repeat what I did previously, and I'm going to press this zipper pocket lining piece away from the zipper. Okay. Okay, so I have the longer piece here, the shorter piece here. Now I kind of went and put my zipper in the opposite direction that I usually do, but it doesn't really matter which direction it's in. In this step, what's important is that your zipper is right side facing up and that your shorter lining piece is at the bottom, and the lining piece that you did not cut a 1 inch strip, that one should be at the top. And then you place your lining piece over top of the zipper, and you make sure that your zipper is centered inside the rectangle opening, and then pin it in place. Now I don't pin the whole thing. Also, you're free to use wash away tape or whatever method you prefer for attaching your zipper in the lining panel. So I usually just do a pin at the beginning and the end because I like to adjust the position as I'm sewing to make sure that my zipper is centered inside the rectangle opening. So I'm going to go over to my machine. You're going to sew all the way around the rectangle opening with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you're going to be sewing through everything, the zipper facing, the zipper, and the lining pieces here. Okay, so the zipper is sewn into the lining panel now. Going to flip this over, and you should have your shorter piece here, your taller piece here. So you're going to take this and fold it down so that the bottom folded edges of your lining pieces meet at the bottom. And I clip them together. Now you'll see that the top lining piece is still a little bit longer. What I do is I just press it upwards, and that keeps it away from the zipper so that when you're opening and closing your zipper, it won't get caught in the zipper. Now we're going to sew up the sides of our zipper pocket. You're going to be leaving the bottom folded edge unsewn because that's where we're going to turn our bag right side out in the final step. So you're going to flip it this way and pull over your lining panel so that all you see is the zipper facing and the 2 zipper pocket lining pieces. You start sewing at the top, you back stitch, and then you sew down, and you try to sew as close as you can. You'll see there's like a little triangle piece of fabric here. So you're sewing over that, and then you sew all the way down to the bottom folded edges, and then you back stitch again. And then you're going to repeat exactly the same thing to sew along this side. Okay, so I've sewn the 2 sides, and I'm just going to trim away a bit. I just trim away mostly at the bottom here because I prefer not to trim any of my zipper. Otherwise, then you have to seal the ends of your zipper so it doesn't fray. So just try to avoid doing that. So now your zipper pocket is ready. Open the zipper all the way so that it is completely open, and leave it open now until we're done. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pleat the bottom edges of my lining panels before I attach the zipper panel. So it's exactly the same method that you used when you were pleating the exterior panels, exactly the same way. Okay, so both of the lining panels are now pleated. I'm going to stop the video here, and then we have one last video where we're going to attach the lining panels to our zipper panels and our lining top panels. Here they are. And then we're going to do the final assembly of the bag.